From the headquarters of telesUR English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sweeney Gray. Peace talks are due to start between the Colombian government and the National Liberation Army, the ELN. The talks are taking place here in the Ecuadorian capital of Quito. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos announced the resumption of dialogue between the two sides on Monday, following a 6-week pause marked by deaths on both sides. The resumption has been welcomed by Ecuador's Foreign Affairs Minister Maria Fernanda Espinosa.
For Ecuador, it is great news that the peace talks between the government of Colombia and the National Liberation Army have been resumed. We truly celebrate that this 5th round is taking place. And we reiterate our commitment to peace in Colombia, because peace in Colombia is peace for all of Latin America.
For a look at what to expect, here's our Denise Herrera.
The National Liberation Army, or ELN, and the government of Colombia opened today the 5th round of peace talk here in Quito, in Cochabamba's house. For now, we don't have any information of both sides. We have to wait. Even in the coming hours, we have some information. We must remember that Santos said before that it's very important for the government of Colombia to stop to renew the bilateral ceasefire. And the Foreign Minister also, Maria Fernanda Espinosa, said that for Ecuador is very important too. So we have to wait in the coming hour if we can have some information. So we will keep you posted in these coming hours. Back to you in the studio.
The former Peruvian President Alberto Fujimori has been called as a witness in the trial of his ex-advisor Vladimiro Montesinos. Fujimori will appear in court at the Callao Naval Base, where Montesinos is already serving a 25-year sentence for murder, abuse of power, and corruption. Fujimori was sentenced to 25 years in jail for human rights abuses in 2009. He has since been pardoned. However, if Fujimori doesn't comply, the consequences could be tough. And our Jaime Herrera joins us from Lima with a look at what's led to today's case and what's at stake.
Dictator Alberto Fujimori has been called to testify as a witness in the case against his former advisor, Vladimiro Montesinos. This is regarding the abduction of journalist Gustavo Gorriti. In 1992, when Fujimori staged a coup, he began his dictatorship by closing down Congress and the courts of justice. That sparked many protests by social groups and prominent figures, including Gorriti, who was taken from his home and detained at the Army's Intelligence Service headquarters. He wasn't told why he was detained, and at some point he said he feared that he would be killed. After a long time, Fujimori was sentenced to 25 years in prison for this case and other human rights abuses. Fujimori will need to provide more details in his testimony. If he doesn't attend, he could be fined or police could be sent to take him by force to declare this information.
We thank Jaime Herrera for that report. Paraguayan President Horacio Cortes could face trial over the killing of an opposition leader, Rodrigo Quintana, who was killed 1 year ago in violent clashes, sparked by a secret Senate vote on an amendment that allowed Cortes to run for re-election. On Twitter, Senator Desiree Massey from the opposition Progressive Democratic Party urged lawmakers to put the president on trial. The request comes just a month before the presidential elections, scheduled for April 22nd. Marielle Franco, a leftist city councillor, has been assassinated in Rio de Janeiro. Franco was a well-known human rights activist and a member of the Party of Socialism and Freedom, the PSOL. She and her driver were gunned down by 2 attackers in downtown Rio. In an official statement, the party said they had reason to believe the murder was executed by members of the Brazilian army. As an activist, Franco regularly criticized the army for systematically violating human rights.
We don't know about any type of threats that she could have received. It's up to the police now to understand how something like this can happen in a case when there weren't any clear threats.
Brazil has been shocked by Franco's death. News of her murder is plastered across all newspapers. Activists are organizing a march today. Some 20,000 people have already pledged to attend the rally. There are also protests being lodged across the rest of the region. Some 10,000 people are demonstrating across Argentina, opposing the elimination of employment programs. Strikes have become all too common in the country as citizens criticize the government's reform plans. Unions and labor groups mobilize in more than 80 parts of the country. They're also calling for genuine long-term job creation. And clashes broke out between riot police and dozens of people just north of the Peruvian capital of Lima. Dozens of officers were deployed to remove around 2,000 alleged squatters who had laid claim to land they say has been unoccupied for 12 years. The police used tear gas to disperse the crowds. The native Lenca people in Honduras are protesting against the construction of a hydroelectric plant located in Retoca, just south of the capital. The project affects the one river in the area, which is their only water supply. Thousands of villagers are taking turns to protest throughout the day and the night. Well, time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. China wants to strengthen cooperation with the Caribbean at the Association of Caribbean States Summit. The Chinese delegation says Beijing wants to work with the region to promote sustainable development. He highlighted initiatives as the Joint Action Plan 2019 to 2031, which involves the funding of infrastructure projects in the Caribbean. The ACS meeting is taking place on the Venezuelan island of Margarita. The group has been working together for about 24 years. Here's what they plan to do.
ACS was formed in 1994 to enhance regional cooperation among the member states. They hope to achieve this through consultation, cooperation, and collective action. The association's key focus points include trade and economic growth, tourism, transport, and climate resilience. There are 25 member states, most of whom have made climate resilience a key priority after last year's twin hurricanes. Venezuela will host this year's meeting. The group also consists of 7 associate members, including France and the Netherlands, as both have territories in the region.
Our correspondent, Freddie Gillingham, is at the ACS meeting in Margarita, and he joins us now live. Freddie, what are the main issues under discussion today?
Hi Soyini and good morning. Welcome back to the second cooperation conference of this ACS summit here in Margarita. Today we are continuing with the theme of disaster risk reduction. Just next to me now in the room beside me we have a set of presentations focusing on some of the 8 active ACS projects which have been implemented and which are now going on. After that, we have a set of discussions and exchange of resilience experiences from some of the countries here. Most notably some of the countries which were affected by some of the recent natural disasters, Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, and of course Mexico. We have of course 68 countries here present at this summit, and not all of them from the Caribbean. Of course, lots hotspots from all over the world, many international observer states. We've been speaking to various representatives today and yesterday from all over the world, Japan, Turkey, Palestine, and of course China. China is making its presence known here at this summit. They are stepping up their involvement in the Caribbean. Just as US influence is waning, China's state-building policy is proving to be quite successful in the region, as opposed to the US's policy of private investment, which has been failing since 2008 with the financial crisis. Back to the summit, well, Venezuela is of course the main host. They took over the presidency from Cuba last year. They will be handing over the presidency to Nicaragua tomorrow. Jorge Arias, Venezuela's incumbent foreign minister, is expected here today at around 5 p.m. We will bring you updates from that later on.
Thank you so much. That is our Freddie Gillingham reporting from the ACS conference in Margarita. The OAS Electoral Mission has published its preliminary report on the Grenada elections. The mission highlighted the need to strengthen certain aspects of the registration process to promote transparency and accountability in the electoral process. The mission also recommended that the authorities introduce legal measures to guarantee gender equality, such as possibly a gender quota. And just before the general elections in Antigua and Barbuda, the country's main opposition party, the United Progressive Party, is claiming that voters are being offered bribes to surrender their voter cards. Although UPP doesn't directly accuse any party of this practice, there are two main contenders in the election, the UPP and the Prime Minister Gaston Brown's Antigua Labour Party. The elections are due on March 21st. The UPP also said that any person engaged in bribery should be persecuted as it threatens electoral discipline. The European Union has removed one Caribbean nation from their blacklisted tax haven countries, but has added 3 more. The EU removed St. Lucia from the list, but blacklisted the Bahamas, St. Kitts and Nevis, and the US Virgin Islands. They removed St. Lucia because the government has made commitments to remedy concerns about tax havens. Caribbean islands hit by hurricanes last year were given more time to comply with the EU's transparency standards. Panamanian law firm Mossack Fonseca has announced it will shut down operations, citing negative press and unwarranted action by the authorities. Mossack Fonseca is at the heart of the Panama Papers tax evasion scandal, involving multiple world leaders who use offshore businesses to safeguard their assets. In a statement, Mossack Fonseca confirmed a smaller group will continue working to address requests from authorities. Figures implicated in the Panama Papers include the former British Prime Minister David Cameron, soccer player Lionel Messi, and Argentina's current president Mauricio Macri, among others. South American leaders have gathered at the 2018 World Social Forum in Brazil. On the docket, a string of issues from labor reforms to elections to human rights. Ignacio Limas is there and brings us the latest.
Así es, saludos estudio, nos encontramos en la ciudad de Salvador.
We are at El Salvador City, located in Bahia State, where the 2018 World Social Forum is taking place. Here, intellectuals, activists, and social movements will meet to look for solutions in face of the capitalist crisis the world is facing, as well as Michel Temer's parliamentary coup and his neoliberal policies. Also today in the forum, an international committee will be launched to promote the candidacy of Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva. Another event will be taking place at 5 p.m. with progressive leaders including Manuel Zelaya, Rafael Correa, Fernando Lugo, Luis Ignacio de Lula Silva, and Dilma Rousseff. It is important to highlight that this forum is organized in response to the World Economic Forum taking place in Sao Paulo, which is bringing together neoliberal leaders, including Michel Temer, Mayor João Doria, and Sao Paulo's governor, Geraldo Alckmin. This forum has been rejected by the people of Brazil. Yesterday, Michel Temer asked for more investment in Brazil, while teachers took to the streets to protest against the pension reform, only to then be repressed by the Sao Paulo police. This social forum is looking to denounce these neoliberal policies against the rights of workers. Back to you.
We thank Ignacio Limas for that report. Another issue facing the region, border disputes. Chilean President Sebastián Piñera has held a meeting with former leaders to discuss the dispute with Bolivia over sea access or access to the sea. The case is before the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Former Chilean leaders like Eduardo Frei, Ricardo Lago and Michelle Bachelet attended the event at the Moneda Palace. The political leaders talked about the country's position they'll take at the court. The case begins on March 19th. After the meeting, Chilean President Sebastián Piñera said the country is united on this position.
Regarding the legal dispute presented to the International Court of Justice, I want to reaffirm, once again, the Chilean arguments and position based on legal and historical evidence. And I want to recognize the support of all former presidents of Chile in the legitimate defense of our rights and our interests.
The Mexican Supreme Court has ruled that the authorities are allowed to inspect people and vehicles without a ministerial order or a warrant from a judge. According to the Mexican court, the measure could only be applied in events of reasonable doubt or when persons are caught red-handed. Still, there's been an outcry by human rights organizations. They fear this could violate basic personal freedoms and privacy. A report from Guatemala has revealed that many migrants that try to make it to the United States often end up missing in Mexico, and the ones that don't disappear are often subjected to human rights violations.
The United Nations has released a report that says Central American migrants are victims of enforced disappearance. That's considered a crime against humanity.
The statistics and the number of disappearances that we know are thousands, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is incomplete information because the situation is not being well documented.
Most families of victims say they lost contact with their loved ones in Mexico as they near the United States border. Mexico has become a dangerous territory for Central American migrants. They are exposed to sexual exploitation, human and drug trafficking. Experts say the discovery of mass graves reflects the horrors these hopeful migrants suffer.
There are deep concerns because the high number of forced disappearances suggests there is a connection between municipal and federal authorities with organized crime.
Human rights organizations are demanding action from the government to protect migrants and to bring justice to the families of the victims.
An act of discrimination is ringing alarm bells and sparking widespread anger in Bolivia, and it all started with one video.
This video, which went viral on social media, was shot on a bus in Santa Cruz. It shows a local woman preventing a migrant of Quechua descent from sitting next to her. The indigenous woman objects to the abuse, but that unleashes a string of insults. She is also called a coya, a disparaging term for people from Bolivia's valleys or highlands.
This act shows that we still have a long way to go as a society. I believe there are different avenues we can use, such as the media or education in general. Through education, we need to reinforce interculturality, not just tolerance. That is an antiquated concept.
The government has intervened and demands the prosecutor's office impose relevant fines.
An act like this has to bear the full weight of the law. Same for any act that belittles the indigenous people or any person's ethnicity.
The relevant authorities have to be the ones who carry out the investigation. As far as anti-racism laws in the Penal Code, it falls to the public ministry to take action.
Representatives from the Human Rights Commission say they will stand as plaintiffs in this case.
Those of us who wear polleras have always been undermined. We've been humiliated for being indigenous. That must stop. We must enforce our own laws, which are meant to protect us.
There are many acts which do not go viral on social media and remain in impunity.
Since 2010, Bolivia's constitution strictly forbids racism and discrimination. There's a law that criminalizes such acts and punishes offenders with jail time.
Time now for another break, but join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
If you're a Brit or a US citizen, you better be ready to eat some humble pie before entering this shoe shop in Ramallah. British citizens are required to apologise and accept their country's responsibility for the Balfour Declaration, which saw the establishment of Israel and the division of Palestine, while US citizens have to grovel over their president's decision to recognise Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
عدم ثقتي في هاي الحكومات توجهت للشعب، هي مخاطبة للشعب وليس إساءة. إنه أنتم يا شعب اللي بتختاروا هاي بشكل ديمقراطي للحكومات تاعتكم واللي بتوفركم هاي الحقوق على حساب حقوق أخرى، على حساب اضطهاد شعوب أخرى، على دعم احتلال بشع.
In Arab culture, the shoe is considered dirty, both because it's on the ground and because of its association with the foot, the lowest part of the body. This being the case, owner Ahmad Al-Hajj Mohammed has taken delight in naming some of the shoes on offer in his shop after Trump, Balfour, and US Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Ouch!
Welcome back. Now let's have a look at some other stories from around the world.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said they will soon expel UK diplomats in response to 23 Russian diplomats ordered to leave the UK on Wednesday. Relations between the two countries have soured since the poisoning of former Russian double agent and his daughter in Salisbury near London. Russia is adamant in refuting the UK's accusations that it was behind the nerve agent, while the UK continues to ignore Russia's request of rendering any physical proof. North Korea's foreign minister is scheduled to meet his Swedish counterpart in Stockholm on Thursday. This is the first major diplomatic move by Pyongyang a week after US President Donald Trump agreed to meet North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un. Speculations are Sweden could be the possible venue for their meeting, which is planned for May. Thousands of people have marched in the Czech Republic's capital, Prague, to support media freedom in the country. People were enraged by President Miloš Zeman's remark, saying journalists should be liquidated. Last week, Zeman also accused Czech media of favoritism and biasness.
If the current politicians swap the Czech TV management, people in this country will no longer learn what is true, and we are back in the communist times when falsehoods were the norm.
Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico has offered to resign over growing discontent in the country after a journalist and his girlfriend were killed last month. 27-year-old journalist Jan Kuciak was investigating a government-linked corruption case when he was killed. It's the first time a reporter has been killed in the country, triggering outrage against government corruption.
In the United States, hundreds of students gathered and chanted slogans outside the gates of the White House as part of gun control protests. The students sat down on the ground with their backs to the White House, a symbolic gesture they hope will send a message to US President Donald Trump. Across the country, thousands others walked out of class in a show of solidarity. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Francesca Emanuel, has the details.
Thank you. Thousands of students walked out of class today. More than 3,000 protests were organized across the country, and in some of them, students stayed out of the school for only 17 minutes. 17 minutes to honor the 17 victims who were killed during the Parkland shooting that happened exactly 1 month ago. We covered a protest that, after those 17 minutes, became a march that started in front of the White House and finished at the Capitol, where many legislators from the Democratic Party welcomed the students. The students thanked the gesture, but said that Congress hasn't done anything yet to protect them. The protesters called for new gun safety legislation, including a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and the introduction of universal background checks.
We thank Francesca Emanuel for that report. A study conducted by the University of New York in the United States has found out that 90% of bottled water contains microplastic content. Following the publication of the results, the World Health Organization launched a review of health concerns. Scientists examined more than 250 bottles from 9 countries and discovered over 10 plastic particles per liter, some as large as the width of a human hair. Presently, the researchers haven't established any direct link from the microplastic to human health. CARICOM and Germany have signed an agreement worth $33 million for marine protection in the Caribbean region. Secretary General Erwin LaRocque and Germany's ambassador to CARICOM, Holger Michael, signed the agreement in Georgetown, Guyana. It will provide a sustainable financing mechanism for the region. This fund will also be utilized for climate resilience projects. This is a significant contribution for the region still struggling to recover after last year's hurricanes battered the Caribbean. Ships sailing in the Caribbean have been told to stay clear of underwater volcano Kickem, located 8 kilometers off the coast of Grenada. The government of the island has imposed a 5-kilometer exclusion zone around the volcano, as eruption could take place in the next 24 hours. The volcano is on the shipping route from St. Vincent to Grenada. And finally, more striking images, but this time from Argentina, where a natural arch broke off in the Perito Morena Glacier in Patagonia. Unfortunately, no one was around to witness the awaited phenomenon. Scientists explain that the rupture is a natural phenomenon of the glacier. The break-off balances the glacier's dimensions and is not a result of global warming. Well, that brings us to the end of this news brief, but for these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for TeleSUR English. I'm Soini Gray. Thank you for watching.